Greetings from Cavite, Philippines. Joe B here. I wanted to do a quick video on my 4 books that I have published and the 5th one that's coming out. Try and generate a few sales and try and get some comments from you viewers about what you might like for me to publish in the future. The videos that I've put out there reading my writings, reading sample chapters from books, etc. The ones that have generated the most interest have been my firefighter stories. I also put one out on retail stories. I worked at a retail store for almost 5 years, and it was a lot of fun. I found it a lot of fun. So that might be a future project. I'd appreciate some feedback from you all about that. You can also go through my channel and find those firefighter stories. Let me know if you might be interested in purchasing a book of those. The first book that I wrote was the last one. The most recent one that I published was Mouse, a Firefighter Tale. This was originally titled Poor Banished Children of Eve. It was typed out on a manual typewriter in the 1990s, and I just carried it around with me. I still have it upstairs. When I retired and moved to the Philippines, I decided to try to type it out on Microsoft Word on my laptop, but it's just difficult finding time to do that when you have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old boy. So the only time I can really do this kind of stuff is late at night, which is when I'm making this video right now, in case you hear the crickets behind me. So I just never got past page 19, manually typing it out on Microsoft Word. One of my wife's nieces showed me how to scan it on our printer to a PDF file. I actually knew how to do that, but I didn't know how to convert it from PDF to a .doc file so I could open it up on Microsoft Word. And she did that. She showed me how to convert it to PDF and then to convert it to a .doc file and open it up in Microsoft Word. And that just blew me away. Within a month of her doing that, I had the whole book on Microsoft Word, edited and proofread, and was ready for publishing. So that was the most recent one, and that's why the delay. That was the first book that I'd ever written. I was heavily influenced at the time in the 1990s by the movie Pulp Fiction. I really liked how that movie had these different elements, different narratives that all came together in the end. So I wrote Mouse, a Firefighter Tale, exactly like that. You've got several different narratives, and they all come together at the end at a scene of a terrific vehicle accident. The second book that I wrote was the Atlantis, Tales of Atlantis. That was written early on in my marriage to my previous wife, who passed away in 2007. I wrote that while she was at work. She was a physical therapist and worked all the time. I worked a 24-hour shift at the fire station, and I had 2 days off. I didn't have a part-time job at that time, so I would just sit at her apartment for 2 days with nothing to do. Swim in the pool, relax, So I just decided to write, and that whole book came out in about maybe 3 months of 2002. And I would sometimes type up to maybe 20 pages a day. Usually it was more like 5 to 8 pages, somewhere around there. But that book just flowed out of me. It was really easy book to write. It just wrote itself. Once I started writing, it seemed to take a life of its own. And the story is a guy who is on a fishing trip, kind of like a Gilligan's Island kind of thing. They end up entering this fog bank, and all of them lose consciousness, and they enter this sort of other dimensional world kind of thing, where they sometimes wake up on the boat, and sometimes they wake up in this island that they've washed up on, and they're not really sure what's real. So our hero gets separated from the group of other guys he's with in the fishing boat, and he goes on these adventures in the doomed island of Atlantis. And he can see that this island is going to be doomed, and there's nothing he can do. Nobody's going to listen to him. So it's kind of a little bit of a parable, I suppose, but it's just I think it's an interesting story. I really liked it because I really got into how these primitive people with very, very little artificial technology, just using materials from their environment, have perpetuated a culture that's just thousands of years old. And then you go inland from these beach tribes, you go inland and you enter this kind of sort of medieval, kind of Roman era, perhaps early Iron Age kind of culture, very literate culture. But still people have very direct relationship to the environment. And then you enter a city that's very much a modern 20th century, perhaps even 21st century technology. And these people are very, very much removed from the harmony that their ancestors, their cousins living on the beach in these tribes are living in. And the people in these mercantile towns that are kind of an Iron Age technology that are still living in with an awareness of the importance of living in harmony with their environment. But the modern people have completely thrown that away, and they just completely misunderstand the whole root of their original religion on the island. And it's to their peril that they've forgotten all this. Then the third book I wrote was the Second Republic of Texas. That was a fun book to write because I was working at a retail store I was the camping guy, and all these survivalists, doomsday preppers, would come in and buy freeze-dried foods and supplies and solar panels and things like that. And I just started talking to these guys, and my boss was really congratulating me because he said, "You've got a fantastic soft sell technique." And I was like, "What is that?" And he said, "The more you talk to a customer, the more they're going to spend statistically. And we've graphed it out." And he showed me on Excel, there's a graph of my department's sales when I'm on duty and when I'm off duty. And it's just, I was generating a lot of money for the store. And I couldn't believe they wanted me to talk to these people. But some of these people are a little bit unhinged. And so I thought, you know what? It'll be fun to just, let's assume that everything they're saying is right. Everything they're expecting is going to happen. What would that world be like? And that's where the Second Texas Republic just flowed out from that. So that's not a consistent narrative. That's a separate, it's a collection of anecdotes and stories, very much what my Firefighting Tales will be like someday. Completely isolated and separate, but all viewing the same sort of events from a distance, from different perspectives. So you've got high school journalism students covering events from their high school newspaper. You've got a baker who decides to make freedom empanadas and designs a special cookie to commemorate the Texas Republic. Just different. You've got a guy coming back late from the closing of the bar, and he's drunk, and his wife's going to be mad at him, but he stumbles upon an event. He stumbles upon the moment that the U.S. military is evacuating everybody from Texas. And a lot of these guys are going AWOL and just stopping at the border and signing on with the Texas Army. And he's witnessing all of this, and crowds have gathered in Gainesville to witness this at the border. Just different perspectives. There's a Texas Ranger who has shut off the power and kind of blockaded, chopped up the roads leading in and out to this border patrol station on the border. The supervisor at the border patrol station refuses to accept that the federal government has closed the border station, and he doesn't accept the fact that Texas is declaring secession because there was a court order earlier that declared that illegal, but since then the federal government has worked out a treaty with Texas, and so it's all good. So the Texas Rangers negotiating with the captain of the Border Patrol at this Border Patrol station to try to finally close the station, and he shut off the power, and the Border Patrol guys are really trying to keep that station open as a symbol of the federal government still having a presence in South Texas. But there's really nothing offensive. There's nothing harmful. There's nothing violent in this book. Just a collection of anecdotes and stories from listening to the fantasies of these doomsday preppers that I worked with. I'm about to publish a collection of short stories. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to, because I've written a lot of short stories. The way I write these books is I'll write maybe a 25 page draft, and then I won't even look at that 25 page draft. I'll just think about the way it came out, and then I'll just slowly expand it and make the first 2 pages 12 pages, and then the next 3 pages 15 pages, and the next 2 pages 8 pages, and it just expands like that. The last book was really the most difficult for me. That is, of the 4 books that I've published, was Crossing Jordan. And that's an allegory for a sort of an epiphany that I had in my life, that I was watching the Mars rovers back in the early 2000s. And my wife at the time was fascinated by how obsessed I was about these little toys, basically, that were driving around Mars. And so I talked to her about that, and I said, look, you have to understand that in my past, I used to mock advanced mathematics because I just hated algebra. I'm really good at geometry. I'm really good at percentages. I'm really good at going on long drives and figuring out the cost of gas per gallon. Let's say $2.83 a gallon. Okay, how many miles did I go to fill up? How many miles per gallon am I averaging? What's my speed? How many gallons am I using per mile? How many gallons am I using per minute? How many cents am I spending per minute? These are kind of puzzles that I'll go over in my brain to keep my brain alert when I'm driving long distances. It's very easy to go on a 10-hour drive in Texas. So I'm good at basic math, but this algebra, the balancing equations and all that, I couldn't get a handle on it, and I got bad grades in it. And I used to mock it, x plus 1, x minus 1, what is this? Balancing equations, how does this have to do with anybody's life? This is so ridiculous. And then I saw those Mars rovers, and it occurred to me that, over the past 20 years I've been making fun of advanced math, but here it is. This is what it's for. This is what it does. And my wife looked at me and said, that sounds a lot like the way you used to look at Christianity. And boom, that was an exact parallel. And she connected that, and I was fascinated by that. That is an exact parallel, because I was raised... I have family members, and there are people that went to my church where I grew up that are genuine Christian people. But for me, it just washed off me like rain off of a duck's back. I didn't take any of that in. I really didn't. In my confirmation class, I was raised a Lutheran, and we had confirmation classes before we got our first Eucharist. And in the confirmation class, this teacher was telling me that Christ really resurrected, and you've got to believe that. And I was just adamant that this is stupid. And I went to see the pastor, and I told the pastor, this is stupid. Christ didn't resurrect. bodily? Are you serious? Nobody believes this. This is ridiculous. You can't expect me to believe that. And he told me, he nodded, and he said, well, your view is welcome in the Lutheran Church. The Lutheran Church is an inclusive church. You're welcome to have that view, and you can still be confirmed. And after that, this was the 1970s, and the Lutheran Church was preaching this. After that, I completely mocked Christianity for more than 20 years. In 1998, I had kind of an epiphany, and I realized that my life was going nowhere. I was trying to be a good person. I was doing everything the secular culture was telling me to do, and my life was completely empty and meaningless. I was about to have a hernia surgery, and there was literally no one in my life that I could trust to help me recover. There was nobody. I was 33 at the time, 32. So I decided I need to redo my life. I need to redo the way I'm living my life. And so I decided to take another look at Christianity. And of course, once I did that, my whole life completely changed, just immediately. So I started to look at Christianity very differently. And I never connected that I had the same view as advanced mathematics. And interestingly enough, advanced mathematics, Pythagoras, especially the Pythagorean cult in the ancient world, was indeed a religion. And mathematics, especially advanced mathematics, did evolve and grow alongside Christianity. It's really interesting. They grew up side by side. It's like they're lost cousins. And so that's what this Crossing Jordan book is about. It's about a math teacher who's an atheist wakes up one morning and God has put him in a parallel world where it's mathematics that's mocked. There's 1,000 different schools of mathematics, but there's only one church, one Christian church, and he is the Christian teacher, the Christian religion teacher at the local high school, not the math teacher. He's the Christian religion teacher. And he really has a hard time with this, understanding what's going on. But he's got a family, he's got kids, he has to support, and so he struggles through it. And he's thinking that, something's going to resolve and he'll be back in his old world soon. And then eventually he comes to the point where he starts to pray with his wife, who's very religious. And he kneels down at one point and crosses himself and makes the sign of the cross. And when he does that, he's immediately transported back into his old world. And he realizes that God wants him to work for him, for God, for God's church in this crazy secular world that is our world. So once he crosses himself, of course, there's the play on words there, crossing the Jordan River, the Promised Land, etc. So that's the 4 books, okay? Mouse, Firefighter Tale, Atlantis, Tales from Atlantis, the Second Texas Republic, and Crossing Jordan. Those are the 4 books I've published so far. There's a short story book I'm going to try to get out before November, certainly before December, and just stay tuned. Well, take care. Hope you're having a good day. Bye-bye.